I'm going to show which writing instruction books have made me the writer that I am. And um, I was going to have like a video series on how to write, but it's just such a complex subject, you really can't do it justice. And I have like the equivalent of a master's degree in creative writing in my head. And I'm going to show you how I did it. I went to the Institute of Children's Literature. I enrolled. It's a correspondence writing school, and Jim Murphy was my writing teacher. He's an award-winning children's writer, and I studied under him for 2 years. And he basically taught me the basics of plotting, building character, using description in your writing. And then that was like the beginning writing. And he also taught me some nonfiction writing skills. It was a very basic but foundational writing course, and I did that through correspondence for 2 years. After I graduated from the Institute of Children's Literature in 1993, I started getting writing instruction books. Probably one of the first ones I read is this one here by Orson Scott Card. Very excellent book on how to build your characters, how to make them believable, interesting, and how to decide how much prominence the characters should have in your writing. I would highly recommend this book by Orson Scott Card. He's an award-winning science fiction and fantasy writer. I found his book very, very helpful. The book is divided up into sections. First, part 1, inventing characters. Part 2, constructing characters. And then part 3, performing characters. So like part 1, he asks you questions on what's a character, what makes a good fictional character, where do characters come from, making decisions. Constructing characters he has a chapter entitled What Kind of Story Are You Telling? And this is really important. He calls it the MICE quotient, which is there are like 4 basic kinds of stories: milieu, idea, character, event. I've gone through this book several times. I highly recommend this for anybody who wants to be a novel writer or fiction writer or even a screenwriter. And he talks about, I'm a character writer, but the idea story is like the mystery story where you're trying to solve an enigma. A milieu story is like The Wizard of Oz. It's all about place, where you go through a certain place and you share with the readers everything you learned along the way, and then when you're done exploring the place, the story's over. Event story is about a disorder. The book I'm writing right now is a very strong character and event story, almost even for both of those. Hierarchy just shows how in a character story, characterization is really important. He talks about that. Highly recommend this book to anybody who wants to be a series. He's really excellent. Orson Scott Card. Very good. Like I said, I've read this book like 20 times, and I still refer to it because I forget things. This book really was very important to me when I wrote Silver Skies. Jack Bickham, he's passed away, Scene and Structure. In this book, he just basically talks about how you build your scenes in your story, how to make them interesting, how to keep the writer interest, how to use cause and effect and make your plot logical, like making sure that if you have something happen, you show the result of that. He said in fiction writing, it's different than life. Life, things can happen that don't make any sense. But he said in fiction, it has to make sense. That's why people read fiction. And that's basically like a summary of his whole book here, but he goes into more than that. And he just talks about how you set up your scenes. The scene is like the event that happens to the character and how he deals with it. The sequel is like even more on how he deals with it, his emotional reaction, his thoughts as he's dealing with the catastrophe he's just been through. And he talks about how you structure all this stuff. Excellent book. I probably relied on this like very strongly for Silver Skies, almost 60%. But I can't say I really relied on any one book. It was sort of like the cumulative effect of everything I read. Very good book. I'm just showing you the books that I have in my library, and I've read them all, except for the reference books. This one I obviously haven't read every page, but this is really good when you're trying to write your descriptions. And Institute of Children's Literature, my writing teacher said, try to use all your senses in your writing. the sense of taste, the sense of smell. That makes the scenes come alive. But yet, and yet you don't want to have so much description that you drown it with that either. It depends. It depends on what kind of story you're writing. This is a great reference. This helps you find just the right words so that this description will say exactly what you meant for it to say. Here's another book on description, which I read when I was working on Silver Skies, and I'm going to be going through this book again. It's basically about using all your senses, and she goes into more detail here. She tells you how to do when you should show, when you should tell, how to use description without hindering the forward motion of the story. Some readers get so carried away with description they get boring, and you don't want to do that either. How to use description in dialogue, how to use it in point of view, in style, setting, and problems with description. This book, probably one of the most important books in my library, Plot by Anson Dibble. If you're a beginning writer, I would say start off with Plot and Characters and Viewpoint by Orson Scott Card. Plot by Anson Dibble. This is basically, if you're going to write a short story or a novel, you're going to have a plot. Okay? If you don't have a plot, then you haven't done your job. She tells plot is, it's kind of like, you think of plot, you think that's like the strategy for the, it's more like, it's kind of hard to describe. It's what the character cares about. It's what the story is about. Every story needs to have a conflict. And my writing instructor, Jim Murphy, said, like when you're writing a short story, in the first paragraph, you want to set up the conflict, let the reader know what kind of a story this is and what the conflict is. And I actually had a conflict in my first paragraph that wasn't the story conflict. And he said, Gail, you got to go in and change it. You didn't get the conflict right. Your story, you see, like the book that I'm writing right now, it looks like the theme is going to be revolving around remorse, and the conflict's going to be revolving around that. How the character can come to terms with his remorse. And Jesus told me not to talk about this next book too much, so I'm not going to. Excellent book here. This book, another good one for a beginning writer, or even a good reference to just go back and make sure you're doing everything right. She talks about how do you do your beginning, how to keep your middle from bogging down, and how to have a satisfactory ending. Very good book here. Nancy Kress, Beginnings, Middles, and Ends. Plot by Anson Dibble. This book is really great for the rewriting stage, getting the words right. Okay, once you've done your first draft and you're in the rewriting stage, Getting the Words Right by Theodore A. Reese Cheney. This is great. I use this a lot for my short story, Emerald Towers. I spent like 3 months on that. Getting the words right, cutting out the flab, moving out excess writing. Like in dialogue, for instance, I have a tendency to just be very long-winded. I usually have to go in there and cut things out of my dialogue, cut things out of my description. I still have a problem with that. But this is a good book to help you know what to cut out, what to leave in, and how to do it. Great. This I got for the Institute of Children's Literature, Essential in a Writer's Library, Elements of Style, William Strunk and White, about grammar, proper usage. Obviously, if you're going to break the rules in grammar, you better know what they are first, and this book will help you with that. But they don't recommend breaking the rules, but if you do, you need to know what you're doing. This book will help you to know what you're doing. Creating plot. I would say this is good for like intermediate level. If you've already learned the basics of plot and character, read this book. J. Madison Davis, Creating Plot, Novelist Essential Guide to Creating Plot. From Writer's Digest book. You would say, how'd you find out about these books? In the 1990s, I was a member of the Writer's Digest book club, and I would read their promotions for various books for writers, and then I'd order them. And the books that I found helpful, I have now. I used to have a huge writing library. Vladimir Putin, when he was my #1 man, which was like from 2001 to 2006, he got a hold of all of the stuff that I couldn't afford to move from Seattle, and he was holding it for me in a secret underground bunker, I think, in Russia. The Jesuits found the bunker and they nuked it. Vladimir was devastated. I think that happened around 2002. So I lost everything that I wanted to move from Seattle. It got nuked by the Jesuits. I asked Terence Jenkins, what happened to my stuff? Vladimir was holding it for me. He said, that's what happened, Gail. He said Vladimir was devastated. Anyways, these are the books I had in the writing library. I reordered them. Um, I came to the conclusion that I would never, I called up the moving company, asked them to save my books. I said, we don't have them anymore, Gail. I know what happened now. I reordered these books. I remembered they were very helpful. This book is something that I ordered around 2000 for intermediate level. It's all about plot, how to increase intensity, how to do the beginning, what is plot, you know, multiple plots, doing subplots, and all that sort of stuff. Here's another good book for intermediate level, Crafting Scenes, Raymond Opsfeld. This is just about how to do different kinds of scenes, action and suspense, love scenes, using setting, deciding on point of view. Crafting Scenes by Raymond Opsfeld. This is for, I would say, an advanced writer, and you may not even need this book. A lot of writers feel you can't teach voice, that it just comes from practice and writing. But I would say once you're through with your manuscript, and when you go through it, and if you feel like it needs like a little extra oomph, this might be what you need. There's some writers that are just famous for their voice, like most Nobel Prize winning writers have a strong voice. And this book just kind of gives you clues how to get there, how to use your words, how to rearrange your sentences to create an effect, and so forth. Some writers are against a book like this. In fact, I think this book's out of print, but I found it kind of helpful. It gave me some ideas for Silver Skies. This was a book I used because I had a private eye, and it's a research guide. I ordered this to help me with my Franz Wilhelm character for Silver Skies. It's helped me with that. It's Private Eyes, Writer's Guide to Private Investigations, Writer's Digest books. If you have a hard time coming with names for your characters, this might help. Also, Characters and Viewpoint, Orson Scott Card gives some good advice in that book about how to pick character names. If you want to write a romance, and I have a lot of romance in my writings, here's a good book on writing romance by Lee Michaels. Writing dialogue. I'd say this is intermediate to advanced. Dialogue is not like everyday speech. It has to either advance the plot, deal with the conflict. It should be adversarial a little bit. Dialogue in a screenplay or a novel is not like, oh, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. No, it's like, how are you today? And then you got to come an answer that's kind of oblique, you know, not exactly a direct answer. It's got to forward the plot, help you to learn about the character more. Those books tell you how to do that. Okay, mastering point of view. This is my Achilles heel. This is my biggest problem with Silver Skies. I don't think I'm ever going to be an expert at point of view. Point of view is very important in a book because that's the eyes and the ears, and you know, when you read a book, you're seeing it through somebody's point of view. Right now, it looks like my next book's going to be first person, but I had to go through several drafts before I made that decision. Point of view is really tricky, and it's really easy to get out of point of view and goof, and this is tough. But this is a very important book. I'd say intermediate to advanced level. Sherry Seisman. Highly recommend this book to anybody who wants to be a serious fiction writer. Setting by Jack Bickham. Helpful ideas on how to use setting, how to use it to further your plot, your character, your theme. Okay. Excellent, excellent book. One of my favorites. Sol Stein. Stein on Writing. Intermediate to advanced. Excellent book. I would say this should be a must-have in every serious fiction writer's library. This guy is great. In fact, I'm going through this right now. He just gives you, once you've kind of had practice with plotting and characterization, he'll make more sense to you. That's the reason I say he's about intermediate to advanced. He also has Fiction Master and Write Pro, very expensive software, which I used to have. But if you get these two books, it's basically the same thing as that, if you read them carefully. This is like, it gives you ideas on how to make your characters live and interesting, how to make your plot relevant. Intermediate to advanced here, a must-have. Okay, other books. Editing Your Fiction by Michael Seidman. Good for that, just like the title says. Associated Press style book. Good to make sure you're following the right grammar, the right format. Okay. Conflict, Action, and Suspense by William Noble. Another good book on how to build conflict in your fiction writing. On Writing Well by William Zinsser. Excellent book on just the basics of good writing. I've got to go because it's theme and strategy. I find this one really important because I'm a literary writer. This is how to make the theme come alive in your writing. How to Write Science Fiction and Fantasy by Orson Scott Card. Fantastic, fantastic. He's a great writing teacher.